Norm grew on a lot of fans.
They don't want to find Dad. If they did, they wouldn't get to be in charge.
I liked how straight up and honest he was. Not only that, but we understood right away that he was running an intelligent build. He has some perception there and definitely enough stealth, so agility, because he was in and out of places without getting detected. Now, Norm starts off a bit of a shy slacker, but blossoms into a more confident soul as our story unfolds. I mean, he did find himself in Vault 31 after all. His relationship with Lucy appears to be strong. Of course, they tease each other, but the fact that he was so supportive of her leaving gives us a sense of alignment. I know we only saw them together for like 5 minutes total, but it was enough for us to feel their bond and how much they trusted each other. And as this season unfolded, we understood more why Betty was so keen on Norm. Of course, it was because he is Hank McClane's son, somebody else who was from Vault 31, but she also points out he enjoys ruffling feathers and explains that what he says carries more weight than even he might realize. Or is it a ruse, given how intelligent Norm is? I like this a lot because it highlights Betty's position of power while indicating that Norm, although he is smart, he is not the smartest guy in the room. So the drama between Steph, Norm, and Betty, and a little bit of Chet, was fun to watch because they were just dancing around each other, each ensuring they say just enough without showing their entire hand. That said, there may be some things that are not as obvious to those that just watch the TV series, such as stats and perks and traits that we will discuss in this video. So I will do my best to explain those stats and how they work in Norm's favor in the TV series. And on that note, because he does not have an official stat released like his sister and the Ghoul, I made a build for him based on what we get in the show. I stuck with a Fallout 3 build, as you guys can see here, because official stats released for Lucy and the Ghoul and all of them have 40 perk points. And in Fallout 4, there's only 28. Fallout 1 has 48, so to ensure the most similar structure is followed, I stuck with a Fallout 3 / New Vegas model. But I will also be taking perks from all games as long as they work in the build we created for Norm. And based on what I have made here, we're going to first highlight key perks that greatly affect how Norm navigated the events of Season 1.
You're a coward. You know that, Chet?
We all are, Norm.
Here is the in-game description. Knowledge, wisdom, and the ability to think quickly. A high intelligence is important for any character. Norm definitely fits this description. He is a quick thinker and is able to adjust accordingly. Like this scene. He understood and did not push with his original thought, even though he may have felt strongly about it. Okay, this is where it also gets kind of fun. I'm going to be pulling some perks, as mentioned, from Fallout games from before Bethesda owned Fallout. And I'm not here to argue which company told the Fallout story better. This is just me wanting to use the entirety of Fallout lore while making this video. And besides, it's more fun with more perks at my disposal. So under intelligence, there are 2 perks I believe suit Norm pretty damn well. We have Computer Whiz / Hacker. This is maxed out for sure, and I'm not going to read the description because the name says it all. Then we have some older perks like empathy. Here is the in-game definition. You have studied other human beings, giving you the inside knowledge of their emotional reaction to you. You will see the reaction level of the person you are talking to when involved in an in-depth conversation. This makes sense because when he is caught in an awkward situation, especially when he suggested having the raiders killed, the empathy perk just makes me feel like more of Norm's intelligent decisions have a greater impact because he is constantly trying to outwit his conversational partner. So empathy is a very old and interesting one, but it is one I like because it does help us understand how Norm is calculating and how he is having verbal jousting fights between Betty, Steph, and again, making sure he does not reveal all the information he is privy to. Now, with that said, there are in-game mechanics and other perks like increasing the amount of XP gained or skill points gained. They were also considered, but it's harder to find an example of that in the show. For example, Swift Learner is a perk that adds an additional 10% XP gained whenever XP is earned. How do we find an example of that? At that point, I'd be looking at every situation and say, oh, damn, Norm got an additional 10 XP when he unlocked Vault 32. It would just be too much. So moving on to perception and agility. I'm going to lump these two as it's what allows Norm to be able to sneak around without getting caught. Perception's in-game definition is the ability to see, hear, taste, and notice unusual things. A high perception is important for a sharpshooter. So obviously he's not a sharpshooter. Maybe he will be later. But noticing unusual things definitely fits the bill. I mean, the guy sees There is something fishy with the radar attack, so a combination of intelligence and perception leads him to investigate Vault 32. Now, the agility's in-game definition is coordination and the ability to move well. A high agility is important for an active character. With all of these three combined, perception, intelligence, and agility, Norm is able to perceive and understand that there is something going on. He uses his intelligence to connect some dots, all the while navigating the 3 vaults without getting caught. I think with this, we get a pretty good build that highlights how Norm is able to properly navigate the obstacles he faces in Season 1. Now, with all of that said, let's go over some key interactions. And to start things off, I'm just going to get this one right out of the way. The Computer Whiz / Hacker perk is the easiest to visually understand. He literally uses the computer, and as a direct result, he's able to advance in certain ways. This perk is what Norm utilizes when he enters Vault 32 with Chet. He finds out that his mom's Pip-Boy was used to access the vault doors. He learns of the suspicious trend of Vault 31 dwellers being transferred over to Vault 33, and that all of these transfers led to these Vault 31 dwellers to being elected as overseers in Vault 33. So I enjoyed how this perk was used. Although straightforward, it gave us an understanding of how Norm pieced things together and why he was capable of reaching the coveted Vault 31. Now, the first conversation that stood out to me was this one with Betty. We know at the end of it all, she is acting as a Vault Tech employee, given she came from 31. Now, in their brief conversation, we see Betty setting the tone for young Norm. This is because, as of right now, Norm has not gone on his mini adventure into Vault 32. We know her tone changes from motherly / caring to more calculating as the season goes on. In this conversation, Norm's intellect via empathy shines bright. He understands what Betty is feeling and acts accordingly. Again, we can straight up say that this was just Norm being actually remorseful, but if we view the conversation as if it were in the game, I truly believe we can see the empathy perk at play. In the game, empathy was usually either loved or hated. This is because the perk highlights positive, negative, and neutral reactions. So if you pick a dialogue option that is highlighted blue, you get a positive reaction from the person you were conversing with. And if you pick the option that is highlighted red, you get a negative reaction, and green for neutral. So you can see the appeal. But of course, this becomes either a saving grace for those skipping through the dialogue, but it becomes a useless perk for anyone just paying any ounce of attention to the game. That said, I think this is something that Norm utilizes in his conversation with Betty and other characters. He understands what makes her happy and what causes her grief. In this specific conversation, it appears both are taking a more peaceful approach as neither one have any real reason to distrust one another. That, of course, comes later. One of these scenes I refer to is when Norm congratulates Betty for being voted as overseer. I can already see all the different dialogue options, but Norm definitely just picked the don't say anything option after his initial remark. So they just stand there, awkwardly looking at each other, indicating the start of the mind games. Finally, the biggest example of Norm utilizing his perks' combined stats to their fullest potential is when he finally comes face to brain with Bud. He starts things off with the Computer Whiz / Hacker perk. Again, my boy got it in one try. To be honest, his perception and intelligence combined in this instance to allow him to deduce details and information he found throughout Season 1. It ultimately led him to sneaking in and hacking Overseer Betty's terminal, thus giving him access to Vault 31. Now, Bud is a talking brain. How else would Norm understand what Bud is feeling if he did not have the empathy perk available to him? I know this final interaction is straightforward and simple, but I think it's the one that highlights empathy the best. How else would you know what Bud is feeling without this perk? The conversation with Bud allows Norm full access to all the details, or most of the details, he was closing in on with his investigation. He gets all the dirty secrets, but gets trapped as a result. And this leads to my surprise perk, Nerd Rage. Here is the in-game definition. You've been pushed around long enough. With Nerd Rage perk, your strength is raised to 10 and gain 50% damage resistance whenever your health drops to 20% or below. I bring this up because of what Betty says here.
Regular boys can get angry and they'll just pee on the wall. When clever boys like you are angry, you're lucky not to have seen where that can lead.
And honestly, I've read somewhere on Reddit that for Norm to escape, he would need to go off somehow. And one of the ideas I liked is that he'd start going berserk, unplugging and disconnecting cryopods until Bud lets him out of the vault. I like this idea because we get to see what a maxed out intelligence build could do. And him going full on nerd rage would be the cherry on top for his character. With what we have seen with Norm in Season 1, I believe his perception, agility, and his intelligence led to the course of action we see him take throughout Season 1. There are, of course, nuances that I may have taken to the extreme to borderline delusional, but I think for the most part, the scenarios I highlighted reflect not only good storytelling, but mirror the build I shared in the beginning. If there are perks and traits or interactions that you believe better depict Norm's build, please share them in the comment section down below, and let's get talking. That is going to do it for me in this one. Make sure to like and sub for more Fallout content. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!